of seeking justice in our communities. And I'm not going to romanticize Indigenous history and say that we should go back to the old ways of hanging people by the balls if they abuse women. Not like there aren't some days that I wish we did that. But for lack of not doing that, I think it's important to consider what we consider to be violence today, and how serious. Not only how serious do we take violence as it pertains to police brutality and justice, but if we consider things like the anti-gang movement that's happening a lot in Native communities right now, and the sort of ostracism of pushing people out for lack of police support and lack of the justice system meeting us where we're at, it leaves us in this sort of confused state of trying to pull from both worlds and salvage our people at the same time. There are still communities, particularly in the north and rural and remote communities, where because the RCMP have sent one person as their detachment to supervise 8 reserves, that people have had to enact their own justice systems, where people do have to tie, a guy up for beating on his partner or his spouse because the police are not going to get there for another day or 2 days or whatever it may be. And seeing our own young people being supported in schools and in institutions to join the military, join the Canadian Border Services Agency, or join the police is a further reflection on if coming from a particular community where you do have restorative justice, or at least discussions of restorative justice going on, if that's really going to work in the system. I don't think we're ever going to wake up one day and be like, we're decolonized and it's over, or we're feminist and we have total equality and autonomy and all of those things and we don't need those frameworks anymore. I am a lot more interested in talking about this as a way of life versus a movement, or versus isolated actions and separated actions where we're not sure what it is that we want to support. I haven't really been talking about sex work because I've left it because Anna Louise has done such an amazing job of it. But an example of those things that I'm talking about in terms of ways of life is to educate our young people about, for example, that we did live in a time where criminalizing our sexuality was not normal, and where violence was not normal either. And if we can support our young people and our next generations to take that knowledge back, but be in charge of the ways that that knowledge gets disseminated and gets shared amongst communities, there's a whole lot of older, stubborn people that are not going to change their minds. Not that I don't love you all, but I think that to say that we're going to isolate ourselves continuously in which movement is going to work for what against police brutality or violence means that one of us is going to keep losing out. And I don't want that to be what the next generations have to deal with. And I don't want to have to tell the next person in my position that this was so extremely difficult to fight back against violence. Good luck trying to work in this field. I want to tell them that we've progressed, an actual progression to the point where we're doing a much better job of that, and that we need to keep this intersectional, this way of life, of living with actual justice in our communities, where we aren't separating the specific issues or thinking that my activist movement is better than your activist movement isn't the case. I want to tell them that this is how it is in terms of what they think is the right thing to do, and that they need to keep it going.
I always say that there are many words of wisdom from our youth, so I just got. I think one of the things as a middle-aged person in that category, you might have shot me in there for too old to change. It's been my belief that dialogue and discussion is the solution. If we understand each other, if you know who I am and where I come from, you are less likely to fear me